with that settled, you can turn to page 199. It says Maskilim, and the top title and the top paragraph should have a squiggly line through it. All right, the Maskilim. And what are the Maskilim? Instructors. Yes, they're instructors. Now I'm going to set this up, as they say, before we plunge into 199. I think it'll be more meaningful. Here's the sort of the picture. Where are we here? Here's Jerusalem, right about there. And in the first half of the tribulation, you have the Jews flocking back to Israel by the hundreds of thousands. Now, everything I'm saying now is, I think, because all that you can do is put all these pieces of the huge prophecy puzzle together, and people come up with different scenarios. And it doesn't mean this is the final one, but this is the best I can do, and I think this makes sense. They flock back, and I think they flock back because the treaty of peace has been signed between the beast of Rome, who's way up yonder up Rome, with the false prophet of Israel, guaranteeing that the Jews can sacrifice in the newly built third temple. And for this reason, because there's peace, and they've got likely the European Union, the great big powers of Europe, the rising Roman Empire, backing this peace treaty, the Jews feel complacent, as Joy pointed out, and they seem to flock back because Israel, I know, is packed with people. It talks about villages without walls, and the whole land seems to be thriving. And that's how it starts out. The rapture of the church has already taken place. And for the first few months, because God releases the white horse from heaven and sets, that's symbolic. God allows the beast of Rome to rise up as a man of peace. And consequently, long-awaited peace treaty is signed and everything's fine, seemingly. And they all get back there, and then things start to unravel. But as soon as we're out of here at the rapture, we're removed prior to the tribulation. Right away, two people arise. Who are those two people? Yeah, we don't know for sure, but that's our best guess. They're called the two witnesses. Yeah, and they're prophets. And I don't think they ever leave Jerusalem. I can't be sure, but I don't think so. But the Jews are flocking to the temple. And these two witnesses are very unpopular. They're wearing sackcloth and ashes, and they're doom and gloom and get ready. The tribulation is here. The kingdom of God is coming. And they're very unpopular, but they can't be killed because God supernaturally preserves them. And they have miraculous powers. They can breathe fire, and they're secure. And they witness. They're the only two Christian witnesses in the world. But their witness, I think, is very effective within Israel, and particularly in that temple, because people are flocking into Jerusalem, and there's a lot of Jews being converted. Hundreds of thousands of Jews are being converted. And among that hundreds of thousands of Jews, right in the land of Israel, they'd be like Messianic Jews. They believe in the Messiah. They're terribly persecuted, but among them are the Maskilim. Now, that's not in the Bible, but it means in Hebrew instructors, teachers that are brilliant. They rise to the top like the cream, and they start opening the Bible, and God gives them wisdom and understanding, and they start to see prophecy. They start understanding it, and they start proclaiming it. And they preach throughout Israel, particularly through Israel. And they're terribly persecuted, and many, many, many are martyred. Well, then things start going downhill, of course, in the tribulation. Halfway through the tribulation, the two witnesses what happens to them? They're killed. So God allows them to be killed. They're subsequently resurrected and go up to heaven. And then, back up, about 2 years into the tribulation. Now there's hundreds of thousands of Jewish converts, and there's the Maskilim that are the leaders among them that are taking the heat, because the Jews are dragging them into the synagogue and causing them. I mean, the Jews are against them, and certainly the Gentiles, the rising beast and so on. But about 2 years into it, an angel appears, rises out of the east, it says, and that's kind of, we don't quite get that, but that's what it says. Comes out of the east and seals 144,000 Jews. Now these are Maskilim. These are instructors and teachers that I think that have already been converted, and they're sealed on their forehead with the name of God, and therefore they become indestructible. Now that preserves their life for the balance of the tribulation, but they don't start preaching worldwide at that point. They're sealed. I'm guessing it's about 2 years into the tribulation, and so they're preserved. Meanwhile, their colleagues are being slaughtered. They're dying. They're loads of them are martyred. Halfway into the tribulation, all of a sudden, a whole huge number of Jews are converted in a day. Probably 1/3 of the entire Jewish population suddenly converted at the middle of the tribulation. And that's a direct result of the defeat of who? Good. Good. I mean, God so supernaturally saves Israel's hide that it's spectacular. The whole world knows that God was the one that intervened. And so it seems that 1/3 of the Jews are saved suddenly and abruptly at that point. And then those 1/3 of the Jews have to go into hiding, because now it's no holds barred. The kingdom of the beast now, the covenant of protection has been destroyed. They've been sabotaged. That's not the word I'm looking for, but the false prophet, the false Jewish prophet, whom they claim to be the Messiah, has literally betrayed them, and in cahoots with the beast has destroyed the covenant of protection. So now it's all points bulletin. They're out to get these Jewish converts. The beast now is claiming that Jerusalem is his place. He's set up the abomination of desolation in the temple. He's taken over the temple. The sacrifices are stopped. Let's go kill these converts, these Jews. The Jews go into hiding. But the 144,000 Jews that are instructors, they don't go into hiding. Why not? Sealed. So they're indestructible. So I believe that it's the 144,000 that do the evangelizing during the last half of the tribulation, and that's when they go to the Gentiles. They go to every nation, tongue, tribe around the world, and there's a tremendous harvest. But with the exception of those who, what? Well, who will not be converted among the Gentiles? Specifically, right, those that have ever heard the word before, because if they have suppressed truth prior, God himself will give them strong delusion. They'll believe the lie of the beast. So these 144,000 are going to the people that have never heard the gospel of Jesus Christ. They have never rejected truth. They have received the truth they had, and when the Maskilim come and present the gospel of the kingdom, Jesus Christ is coming, this is the beast, this is Satan's camouflager, this is false, they come to Christ. Now, there's going to be tremendous slaughter and sacrifice and horrors, martyrdoms, but their souls are saved, they're going to heaven. The Jews, meantime, they're called the remnant of Israel. Those that are converted are the remnant that embrace the Messiah. They're in hiding. So we want to look at them just for a second, because what I'm going to talk about tonight is directly related to the scenario I'm going to set up here, which I've done this before. I think they escaped from Jerusalem, and that's where it says in Matthew, if you're in the housetop, don't go down into the house. If you're in the field, don't go back to get your coat. Pray that it's not in winter, that you're not pregnant or nursing, because it's going to be run for your lives. And it says that God says, I will bear you on eagle's wings, which is such a nice touch, because that's exactly what he said when they were crossing from Egypt to Canaan. I will bear you on eagle's wings. And it certainly seems to be a very similar scenario. I think they run toward the Jordan. I think they cross on the bridge here probably. I think they follow down into Moab, where you've been with Ruth and Naomi. Follow right down here, cross the Arnon River, I believe. They're befriended by friendly Jordanians, some. And I think they're running for their lives. I think they go down here through Basra, that used to be called Basra, Sela, which is present-day Petra, and I think they hole up in Petra. Now, there's problems with the scenario, because I estimate there's 5 million Jews, and Petra's capacity is only about 30,000. So, I mean, I don't know what to do with things like that. There's hints that perhaps they're over here in the whole eastern side, what is known as Galilee. But basically, they're in this area. This is what I think. I think when they're coming down, I've said this before, they come down toward Petra. This whole section here is called the, ready for this, Al Gore. The name of this is Al Gore. That's the Hebrew name. It's actually called the Araba, but that's how it translated, Al Gore. Anyway, they're in it's like a mini Grand Canyon. It's like a big slash in the earth, very rugged, and it's a sort of a valley. And there's high mountains, and Petra is the sealed city built by the Nabateans about 700 BC. Amazing, because it says in Revelation that they're going to flee to a place that God has prepared for them. Well, this is tailor-made. The Nabateans dug this out of the rocks. It's a very secure fortress city. It has water supply. It's just set up, and then I don't think anybody knows what happened to the Nabateans. They seemed to disappear off the face of the earth. And Petra was covered with debris, and it was not found from about 1000 AD. It was rediscovered in 1810. And they dug it out, cleaned it up, and it's just a hotel waiting for the Jews, as far as I can see. But this is what I think happened, is that Satan himself empowers the beast. The beast is the emperor of the Roman Empire, who is now in Jerusalem. Satan, it says, gives his power to the beast. I guess he enters him, but it doesn't say this. It says he gives his power to the beast. So it says that the end thereof shall be with a flood. And that particular end is at the middle of the tribulation. There's two ends. The middle of the tribulation kind of comes to an end, and then the end of the tribulation, at the end of the 7 years, comes to another end. It says the end thereof will be with a flood. And it says, Satan will cause a flood to proceed out of his mouth to destroy the remnant, and the remnant will give glory to God. Now you put those pieces together. Obviously the flood does not come out of his mouth, because Satan is a spirit, for one, and obviously that is not physically possible. The word there in the Greek, out of his mouth, means through a hole in the ground. It comes out from the earth, this enormous flood. And it's a tempestuous flood. There's lots of details about it. And right around the same time, right around that time, there is a horrendous earthquake. And I put the pieces together that while they're fleeing, and they get caught up in this very narrow Araba, and they're all in here, that the earthquake may split, pure speculation, but I think it's possible. There's a great rift valley. This is a huge rift valley. It goes way down, and ends up way down in Africa. That if this splits open at Elat, there's a beautiful city there. The Jews have Elat, and the Jordanians have their Elat. They're side by side. It's a beautiful resort town today. But if that split open there, here is the Dead Sea, and this is the lowest place on earth, right? This is extremely deep. It's 3,000 to 4,000 feet here, and this is a good bit higher. That if the earthquake splits here, that this water would rush like a torrent right up the valley and practically wash away and drown the fleeing Jews. And then it says, the earth opened her mouth and swallowed the flood. So if God supernaturally opens that, the water goes down into the Araba, and they're spared and escape to Petra, the walled city. If that scenario is correct, now then, keeping that in mind as a scenario, then we come to the Maskil Psalms. Now the Maskil Psalms are Psalms, there's 13 of them, Psalms of instruction. They're not prophetic Psalms. Now, did you get Joy's difference when she put out the difference between a prophecy and a foreshadowing? It's quite significant. A prophecy, how would you know if you're reading Amos or Hosea or Isaiah whether they're talking about an event that happened in 800 BC or they're talking about something that's coming in the future, like the tribulation. How would you recognize that? Sharon? Sharon? Yes, all of that is extremely important. But let's say you don't know the rest of the Bible. What would... Keywords. And on page 10, I think it's page 10, I listed 45 phrases. When you see those in the latter days, at the end times, in those days, in the last days, trigger you to know that those are prophetic. But where they're not evident, you have to be careful because it's probably not talking about prophecy, it's talking about something then. Now the Maskilim Psalms, these 13 Psalms, are not prophetic, but they're foreshadowing. Because, and that means they're types, or if you have a Psalm of David and he's talking about his present situation, you say, this is like deja vu, because, you know, when you know a little bit of what's happening in the tribulation, say, that sounds like David was prophesying. The fact is, David is talking under the anointing of the Spirit of God about his situation, but it's like, it's actually describing a future event. It's not prophetic, but it's a foreshadowing. You understand that? Did you want to say something, Sharon?
Well, I just, one of those signs, Chrissy, when you were talking about the earth and Rift Valley and the Dead Sea and all that, the Dead Sea, I saw a program on it a couple weeks ago where it talked about the shows in the last 10 years, especially, it's disappearing. It's shrinking.
Yes, I saw.
The development and also taking water out from elsewhere.
Yeah.
But this huge, big, the earth, you know, that's a big fault line. Earth is already breaking apart there. Huge sinkholes, and it's already, earthquake activity is like, it's getting ready to happen. It's like it's already starting to
Right. Well, the reason I even laid that scenario is because we're going to look at these Maskilim Psalms. Now, what I've done is listed them by author, and I have edited them tremendously. But what I've edited out, see if it doesn't, you'll notice how much it's talking about waters and floods in them. And if it doesn't seem, and if it's true that they are a foreshadowing of the future time, it's very revealing as to what those Jews will suffer, how their situation will be in the tribulation. Yeah, exactly, right. I think that's what it is. So look at page 199, should be number 2, writers, the Maskilim writers of the Maskilim Psalms of Instruction. David wrote 6 of them. So I've got excerpts from his 6 Psalms on this page and next. Okay, he says in Psalm 32, Maskilim Psalm, surely in the floods of great waters they shall not come nigh unto him. Thou art my hiding place. All right, the floods of great waters. And the Gulf of Aqaba is one of those great waters for sure. And the hiding place could be what? Petra. Then in Psalm 52, why boastest thou thyself in mischief, O mighty man? Okay, who might that be? Why boastest thyself in mischief, O mighty man? Thy tongue. Now remember the beast, one of his main weapons is what? Oratory skills, yes. Thy tongue like a sharp razor working deceitfully. Thou lovest evil and lying, all devouring words. O thou deceitful tongue. And that sounds very much like the beast to me. God shall destroy thee forever. The righteous shall see and fear and laugh at him. This is the man that made not God his strength, but it trusted in the abundance of his riches and strengthened himself in wickedness. And that sounds like an apt description of the beast. Okay, Psalm 53, oh, that salvation of Israel were come out of Zion. And obviously he's saying that he's not in Zion, but he's looking forward to salvation coming out of Zion. When will that occur? Yeah. Well, they're already in the second half when they're writing this. They're in hiding now. They're getting there anyway. So when would now the remnant of Jews that are in hiding for the last 3.5 years, you understand? They're in hiding. So when would their salvation, is God just say, forget it, they're down there, leave them? Yeah, the second coming, prior to the millennium, yeah. Yeah, in the millennium, but it would be initiated by Christ coming at the end of the tribulation. You got that? So he's saying, oh, that salvation would come out of Zion. Where's Christ going to be when he comes to earth? Zion, which is what? Right. When God bringeth back the captivity of his people, Jacob shall rejoice and Israel be glad. In other words, if this is referring to that time, they have hope that eventually they will be restored to Jerusalem. Strangers are against me, oppressors seek my soul. 55, my heart is sore pained within me. Terrors of death are fallen on me. Fearfulness and trembling are come on me, and horror hath overwhelmed me. Oh, that I had wings like a dove. Well, God said, I can do one better. I'll give you wings like eagles. So David was asking for dove's wings, and the Lord said, I'll give you eagle's wings. Then would I wander off and remain in the wilderness. So he's in the wilderness. Okay? I would hasten my escape from the windy storm and tempest. Destroy, O Lord, and divide their tongues, for I have seen violence and strife in the city. What city would that be? Jerusalem. Exactly. Day and night they go about on the walls. Mischief and wickedness is in the midst thereof. Deceit and guilt depart not from her streets. Why is that? Who's running Jerusalem now? The beast is setting up his headquarters. Now this next part I find very interesting. Now, especially if you put the prophetic spin on it and assume now we're in the last half of the tribulation, and David is writing this, and it's a foreshadowing. For it was not an enemy that reproached me, but it was a man mine equal, my guide and mine acquaintance. We took sweet counsel together and walked to the house of God in company. Exactly. I think that's what he's talking about. I think he's speaking on behalf of these Maskilim that are, some of the Maskilim that aren't sealed are in Petra. They're the preachers to the people. They're the teachers. And he's saying this false prophet who is Jewish was one of them. You know, and they thought, you know, he was rising up, but he betrayed them, and he used to even go to the synagogue. He was a Jew. He said, we went to the house of the Lord, that would be the synagogue, in company. So they've been sold out by this false prophet who helped destroy the covenant and helped seduce them into the arms of the beast. I will call upon God, the Lord shall save me. God shall hear and afflict them, even he that abideth from old. He hath put forth his hands against such as be at peace with him. Now again, that's talking about the false prophet, I think. He has what? Broken his covenant. Now again, if that's referring to the false prophet, that would indicate that he was a conspirator in the breaking of the covenant. When Israel needed defending the most, he let them down. And there's many examples in the Old Testament of the same thing, exactly. The words of his mouth were smoother than butter, but war was in his heart. His words were softer than oil, yet were they drawn swords. He was a complete deceiver, a saboteur. But thou, O God, shall bring them down into the pit of destruction. Well, that's a fact. We know that, right? At the end, when God comes down, the beast and the false prophet and the Satan are all being cast into the pit of hell. Bloody and deceitful men shall not live half their days, but I will trust in thee. Okay, next page, 199a. David's still talking, in the way wherein I walked have they privately laid a snare for me. Now I hear that, I think of landmines. And I think there will be all kinds of tricks perpetrated against these hiding Jews. The beast will want to ferret them out and kill them. And that's why the warning went out in Matthew. If they say, lo, here is Christ, believe them not, because you come out of hiding. Where is he? He's over in the plain. Here's Christ. He's come back. And some of the naive and gullible will run out, and that's their end. So he's going to use every trick he can to bring them out of their stronghold and destroy them. In the way wherein I walked have they privately laid a snare for me. Refuge failed me. No man cared for my soul. I cried unto thee, O Lord, thou art my refuge. I am brought very low. Deliver me from my persecutors, for they are stronger than I. Bring my soul out of prison, that I might praise their name. That prison there translates as my hiding place. The righteous shall compass me about, for thou shalt deal bountifully with me. So even though he's in dire straits at the time, there's always that, they know that God was coming for them, and there's hope coming. And then the next two were written by Asaph. You need to remember Asaph. When you get to heaven, you'll be very embarrassed if you don't know Asaph. He is exactly what it says, a Levite, a prophet, a poet, and a leading temple musician. And he was like the choir director. And he's all through the Bible, and the sons of Asaph and the great singers. And he was a good guy. O God, he says, why hast thou cast us off forever? Why doth thine anger smoke against the sheep of thy pasture? Now, even though these are believers, this remnant, they still get the bloodbath. They're still in for the tribulation. God is chastising the Jews, and even though they're the remnant, they still get the fallout of the tribulation. They're protected, but it's a terrible time for them. Remember thy congregation, which thou hast purchased of old, the rod of thine inheritance, which thou hast redeemed. The rod is the offspring. We're Jews that have embraced you as Messiah. This Mount Zion, wherein thou hast dwelt, the enemy hath done wickedly in the sanctuary. What does that mean? Exactly. And that's right. And he even set up that wretched abomination, desolation in the holy place. The enemy hath taken over the sanctuary. Thine enemies roar in the midst of thy congregation. That's in the temple. They're the ones that are given their propaganda, and they set up their ensigns. I guess that's ensigns. Is that how you pronounce that? Ensigns for signs. Now, what's an ensign?
Flag.
A flag, a banner, a declaration. They set up their ensigns for signs. I find that word rather interesting, because you don't have to turn to this. Let me read you a verse when the king of the north and his gang are in the southern Judean wilderness here, coming to their unhappy ending. They see that the beast has put up his ensign over Jerusalem. Apparently there's a banner that's visible. And they see it. And they're filled with fear, because the beast has come back from being dead and raised his flag, and they're stuck in the wilderness. They're going back to challenge him, but everything's falling apart, and they see that. They scatter. They're scared of it. So he'd already established his ensign over, and now that the Jewish remnant has gotten out of there, thy enemies roar in the midst of thy congregation. They set up their ensigns for signs. So that's another confirmation of the same thing. It says of Gog, his prince, Gog, shall be afraid of the beast's ensign. But I got news for you. Turn ahead to 2:10 for a second. Just for a second. We're skipping ahead, but when the remnant is rescued at the end of the tribulation, at the very end of the tribulation, verse 2:10, under number 3, the second bottom line, for they shall be as the stones of a crown, lifted up as an ensign on his land. So the Jews will have the last laugh. Their flag goes up. The flag of, not their flag, the flag of Jesus Christ, the Redeemer, goes up for the millennium. But at this time, in the last half of the tribulation, the beast has his ensign for signs. Deliver not the soul of thy turtle dove unto the multitude of the wicked. Forget not the congregation of thy poor forever. Have respect unto the covenant. Now, which covenant do you think that one is?
God.
That's right, the Abrahamic covenant, the covenant they have with God. You know, remember us, your people, God. Don't break your covenant. So that's what he's talking about. For the dark places of the earth are full of the habitations of cruelty. Arise, O God, plead thine own cause. Remember how the foolish man reproaches thee daily. Forget not the voice of thine enemies. The tumult of those that rise against thee increases. So they're getting more and more powerful in Jerusalem. And the beast is waxing worldwide in fame. Sharon?
For instance, the Romans did that when they first occupied Israel, Judea. They went in and put the ancient banners and the metal signs in the temple.
Did they? I didn't know that.
Yeah, they did.
Very
But
interesting.
then all the Jews said they would rather die
Oh.
go over together, and they said, you take them out, we're all going to kill ourselves. So they're all,
But you also noticed that Hitler during World War II, every time you see a parade, it's nothing but battle flags. It says that when battle flags says war. I mean, that struck terror into the hearts of people who saw those flags. Wow. So there's a lot historically of significance in this as well. And then Psalm 78, the Lord chose the tribe of Judah. Now, how many tribes were there altogether? 12. What was special about Judah? The fourth son. What? That's right, Carolyn, the Messianic line. Christ came from the tribe of Judah. So that's, the Lord chose the tribe of Judah, the Mount Zion, which is what? Right, which he loved, and he built his sanctuary, like the earth which he has established forever. He chose David his servant. He brought him to feed Jacob his people and Israel his inheritance. So he, David, fed them and guided them. Now, that was a fact that God set up David, and David actually did feed the people. I mean, there's almost like Joseph did. There's a whole thing about that. But let me read you a verse out of Ezekiel. I think this is 34. And this is definitely prophetic of the millennium. It says, I will set up David, and he shall feed them and be their shepherd. Now, the literal King David will come back in the millennium and be very involved in the temple in Jerusalem and will feed the people. There's quite a bit of detail about it. So, it certainly seems prophetic right here, because we know for sure that Ezekiel's prophetic. So David will come back and feed them. That'll be in the millennium. And then Heman, he's a wise Levite and temple musician appointed by David, and he's a good guy. Psalm 88, I have cried day and night before thee. My soul is full of troubles, and my life draweth nigh unto the grave. Now think of him as foreshadowing the remnant that's hiding out. My life draweth nigh unto the grave. Thou hast laid me in the lowest pit, in darkness, in the deeps. Now, what I think of there is somebody in a completely black cave where it's underwater, where they've crawled up into an air pocket and they can't get out because of the water, and it's completely black. You know the type? You know, the rescue out of these caves? Oh, David did hide in caves, yes, and sort of in this general area, too. Exactly. I have cried day and night. My soul is full of troubles. My life draweth nigh unto the grave. Thou hast laid me in the lowest pit, in darkness, in the deeps. Thou hast afflicted me with all thy waves. I am shut up. That means trapped. And I cannot come forth. So, going back to this possible flood from the Gulf of Aqaba down the Araba, see, it could isolate, it could be so overwhelming that people get stuck in caves and spots and grab on here, and then the water, they can't get out. So it seems like this is what is being described. I am shut up, I cannot come forward. Lord, why castest thou off my soul? Why hidest thy face from me? I'm afflicted. While I suffer thy terrors, I am distracted. Thy fierce wrath goeth over me. The terrors have cut me off. They came around about me daily like water. Lover and friend hast thou put far from me, and mine acquaintance into darkness. So it's going to be horrific for those people trying to escape. But God spares them. God pulls them out at the last second. I mean, they don't die, but they go through an awful lot of trouble. I think we'll take our break. David, my servant, and thy seed will I establish forever, and build up thy throne to all generations. Now that's quite literal. David will be back in the millennium. This is page 199b. David will be back in the millennium and serving in the temple. The heavens shall praise thy wonders, thy faithfulness in the congregation of the saints. God is greatly to be feared in the assembly of the saints, and to be had in reverence of all them that are about him. Thou rulest the raging of the sea. Now the first paragraph is about the millennium, I believe. Thou rulest the raging of the sea. When the waves thereof arise, thou stillest them. Thou hast scattered thine enemies with thy strong arm. Justice and judgment are the habitation of thy throne. In thy favor our horn or kingdom shall be exalted. Now that's the kingdom of David. That's the Jew. This psalm is foreshadowing the millennium, when the Jews will be the dominant people on the face of the earth. The Lord is our defense, and the Holy One of Israel is our king. I have found David my servant. I will set his hand also in the sea, and his right hand in the rivers. And I have no idea what that means. He shall cry unto me, Thou art my Father, my God, the rock of my salvation. I will make him higher than the kings of the earth. My mercy will I keep for him forever, and my covenant shall stand fast with him. His throne as the days of heaven. If his children forsake my law and walk not in my judgments, if they break my statutes and keep not my commandments, then will I visit their transgression with the rod and their iniquity with stripes. And that's the whole purpose of the tribulation. God is chastising his wayward people for generations of rejecting his prophets and finally rejecting his son. Nevertheless, my loving kindness will I not utterly take from him, nor suffer my faithfulness to fail. I will not lie unto David. His seed shall endure forever, and his throne is the sun before me. It shall be established forever as the moon, and a faithful witness in heaven. So that's a foreshadowing of the future days of the Jews. And then there's a couple by unknown authors. Psalm 42, O my God, my soul is cast down within me, therefore I remember thee from the land of Jordan. How interesting. Now, where are they going to be hiding? Present day what? Jordan. And of the Hermonites from the hill Mizar. Now, that's why I said the Jordan is this land on the east side of the Jordan River. It's the land of Jordan is what used to be Moab, Edom, and Ammon. It's present-day Jordan. But the Hermon, I don't have it on this map, it's way up at Mount Hermon in the north. And the mountain Mizar is part of the mountains of Hermon. So it's possible that some of the remnant might go in the northern direction. I'm not, no idea. But based on this, it's possible. See, from the land of the Hermonites. Deep. Now this is a fascinating. See, I'm a literalist. I take things literally unless I have to take them symbolically. But this scenario I talked about with the split in the water is purely a scenario. But if there's merit in it, and the water is gushing up the Araba on its way to the lowest spot on earth, the Dead Sea, that would be a torrential flood, then that gives new meaning to the expression here, which is where I can't even find it. Where is it?
Third line down.
Okay, I still can't find it. Oh yeah, it's insert up there. Deep calleth unto deep. That would be the water of the Dead Sea is calling for the waters of the Aqaba. Deep is calling for the deep. Deep, like they're trying to get together there. Deep calleth unto deep at the noise of thy water spouts. So that would be a tremendous flood with tornadoes and, whatever. All thy waves and thy billows are gone over me. I will say unto God my rock, interesting use of rock there, why hast thou forgotten me? Why go I mourning because of the oppression of the enemy? So I think that could be a foreshadowing of that. Psalm 44, thou hast scattered us among the heathen. Now where are they? They're in Jordan, aren't they? And they are among the heathen, Gentiles. Thou makest us a reproach to our neighbors. In fact, in the millennium, in that time, they are a reproach among the Jordanians, because among some of them. There are certain ones that care for these. It's very like the Holocaust. It's very like the Holocaust when certain Gentiles defended the Jews in the Holocaust, like Corrie ten Boom, and stashed them away and risked their own lives to save the Jews. It's very like that. But by and large, the people ignored them and betrayed them. And that's how it'll be then. A scorn and a derision to them that are round about. Thou makest us a byword among the heathen, him that reproaches and blasphemeth by reason of the enemy and the avenger. Thou hast sore broken us in the place of dragons. Now, I find that a fascinating reference, because dragon means Leviathan, and Leviathan means dragon, and there's I've got a whole huge note on the Leviathan. I explored that pretty thoroughly, and I believe, and I think I could prove it, the Leviathan inhabit this body of water here, and a lot of them were crushed to death. They went extinct. A good many of them died during the crossing of the Red Sea when the waters slammed together. It says they crushed the heads of the Leviathan in the deep and threw their bodies up on the Sinai Peninsula here and probably over into Midian. But to say here, thou hast sore broken us in the place of dragons, immediately comes to mind the Gulf of Aqaba. So again, that kind of possibly connects with the scenario that's where it all takes place. And covered us with the shadow of death. For thy sake we are killed all the day long. That means threatened with death. We are counted as sheep for the slaughter. O Lord, wherefore hidest thou thy face and forgettest our affliction and our oppression? For our soul is bowed down to the dust, and our belly cleaveth unto the earth. What do you think that means? Yeah, but if your belly's cleaving to the earth, yes, but you know what happens if you don't eat? You know, you're starving, and I kind of think your belly cleaving onto the earth is starvation. They're losing weight and they're starving to death. Arise for help, redeem us for thy sake. Gird thy sword upon thy thigh, O most mighty, with thy glory and thy majesty. Ride prosperously. Thine arrows are sharp in the heart of the king's enemies, whereby the people fall under thee. Thy throne, O God, is forever and ever. Thy scepter of thy kingdom, the scepter of thy kingdom, is a right scepter. And that's calling for the Lord's return. So those are the 13 Maskil Psalms that seem to foreshadow the times of the remnant during the tribulation. And they add a lot of interesting background, I think, because you don't get that in Revelation. And then the witnesses on page 199C. Get your pen to cross out. During the cross out first half of the, it should just read during the tribulation, and then cross out everything up to Jehovah, in addition to the 144,000 still servants of Jehovah. Cross that out. Yes. So it should read during the tribulation. Then we go to the Maskilim. Jewish converts will be bold witnesses of Christ. Yeah, so in other words, what we want to say there is that during the entire tribulation, the Maskilim will be bold witnesses of Christ. Now, there will be tremendous number of them put to death in the first half, and then there will be 144,000 sealed that will go into the last half and not go into hiding, because they're the evangelists now. They're the only evangelists. The two witnesses are dead, so they're it. And they're witnessing. And then the Jews that are in hiding will have Maskilim among them to teach them. Because they're newly converted, and if they don't have teachers and instructors, I mean, these instructors are going to be brilliantly gifted and given special wisdom, and they're going to understand what's happening and know their scriptures. So a lot of them, I think, are probably Orthodox Jews, because they know the scriptures. All of a sudden, it all makes sense to them.
You might need somebody that's physically protected too, depending on how they're being brought out. If they're in hiding,
yes, they're in.
Need somebody there that can't be destroyed to block.
Right. Well, I think they can be. I think God protects all of the Jews that are in hiding. So, but there's Maskilim in hiding, and then there's the Maskilim that are evangelizing the world that are sealed. The Maskilim are giving understanding and wisdom. The unfolding events of the tribulation will shed light on obscure Old Testament prophecies. And I think they know these prophecies. Daniel says, the people that know their God shall be strong and do exploits. And this is prophetic. They that understand shall instruct many. They that be wise shall shine. They that turn many to righteousness as the stars. The wise shall understand. And then in Matthew. Now this reference particularly is in the first half of the tribulation. They shall deliver you up to councils and synagogues, rulers and kings, and it shall turn for testimony against them. Take no thought, do not premeditate, for whatsoever shall be given to you in that hour, that speak ye. For it is not ye that speak, but the Holy Ghost. I give you a mouth and wisdom, which all your adversaries shall not be able to gainsay nor resist. So that's really speaking of the Maskilim there. Whoso readeth, let him understand. And that, all of a sudden, their eyes of their understanding is opened. Here's wisdom, like him that has understanding, count the number of the beast. And I think the Maskilim will quickly figure out the whole scenario of prophecy and the beast and his number. Wounds, the Maskilim will suffer intense persecution. The ones that are not sealed will. They shall fall by the sword, flame, and captivity in the first half. Many shall be tried. They shall lay their hands on you. They shall deliver you up to the council and synagogue. You shall I just read that? I got that same thing in there twice. I didn't even see that till this moment. Okay, that whole thing you can cross out. Matthew, that whole passage is just a repeat. That's another thing with the computer. If you move something, you better not forget to delete it. I obviously did. And then they're slain for the testimony that they held. And then Revelation 7:14. These came out of great tribulation, hunger, thirst, heat, and tears. Oh, is it not identical? Oh, okay. Some of it's there. Oh. I got the... Okay. You shall be hated of all men and nations for my sake, betrayed, delivered up and afflicted, beaten, persecuted. They shall lead you and deliver you into prison, and they shall kill you. So there's going to be a very rough ride during that tribulation. You don't want to be in that. And it's only by the mercy of the Lord that Gentiles can be saved. The whole thing is really for Israel. It's to punish Israel. It's to bring forth the remnant, and then it's to put the remnant through the fire, and then at the end is the glory when Christ returns, and they're, vindicated and exalted. And then 200, we crossed out wounds, and then washed, the cleansing of the converts. And that day the Lord shall wash away the filth of the daughters of Zion. I think that's physical and spiritual. And when he comes, he brings them to Jerusalem to purge and make them white at the end time. Many shall be purified and made white. White robes were given unto every one of them. Multitudes before the Lamb clothed in white robes. These washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. So the end justifies the means. And worship of the witnesses and their converts. Salvation to our God, which sitteth upon the throne. They that are before the throne of God, and he shall dwell among them. So that's when he comes in power and great glory, and one of his first orders of business is to rescue the remnant from Basra and from Selah or Petra. And we'll finish, just glance at the next page, and we're just literally going to glance at it. That's the end of the Maskilim right there. That's all I'm going to do about it. But anyway, on page 200A, this is something that we'll refer to back and forth. I just decided to insert it here because I'm going to do a little piece before we get into the 7 trumpet judgments. Okay, let's look at this, page 200A. Flee from the wrath to come. Now that's what's going to happen. There's going to be great wrath in the tribulation. The first column are the seals judgment. Second column are the trumpet judgments. And the third column are the vials judgments. How many judgments altogether there? 21. And so the tribulation unfolds with these 21 judgments. The trumpets come out of the 7th seal. In other words, when the seventh seal is broken, then comes forth the seven trumpets. When the seventh trumpet sounds, then comes forth the seven vial judgments. And it's labor pains. They get increased to the very end. And then it's like fireworks, God throws everything at them at the very last one. We have finished the first 6 seals. Remember the seals of the seven-sealed scroll? And each time one is popped open, something happened. So we had the first 4 were horses, right? And you know what they represented. And then 5, suddenly you're in heaven for the 5th seal, and you find the souls of the martyrs underneath the altar. Now, where are these martyrs coming from? Not in years past. I think just the tribulation martyrs. And they're just flooding up there, these martyrs in the tribulation. Yeah. Well, I don't think I think they get slaughtered in the non-believing Jews. I don't think are slaughtered till the last half. But during the first half, many of those Jewish converts will be put to death. And their souls are under heaven's altar. They're secure, but they're confined, which is typical of where the Jewish believers were before the resurrection. This is just a sidebar here. Before Christ resurrected and went to heaven, where were the souls of the believers who had died? Not before Christ went to heaven. Right. They were in Abraham's bosom. And they weren't in heaven. It was also called paradise. But that is not heaven. It's paradise. It's a part. Abraham's bosom is a place of security and comfort, but it was confined. And they didn't march into heaven until Christ resurrected from the dead and said, "Touch me not, for I am not yet ascended to my Father," took the blood and put it on the mercy seat in heaven and led captivity captive. He brought them out of where they were, and they followed like a parade into heaven. And then there's some exciting passages. When you start linking these things together, back in Daniel 2, where it talks about the Ancient of Days, it sounds to me like this entourage presented Christ to the Father. It's really startling. But in any case, the situation they were in Abraham's bosom, where they were comfortable, secure, but confined, is similar to these. The Lord says, just be patient, just wait till the rest of the martyrs come. And then you can, you all got white robes and you're fine. Just content yourself. But they didn't have the run of heaven at that point, but they will. And that was number 5. And number 6, there was this massive earthquake, which I think probably triggers the flood that I was talking about. And then number 7 is silence in heaven for half an hour. Now, we're just going to move into that one next week. We're going to do silence. But I wanted to compare the 7th seal, the 7th trumpet, and the 7th vial. And there are similarities there. And so by having this little grid here, it helps us to keep all these judgments straight to a certain extent. But because the 7th seal is not explained at all. It simply says, I'll read it to you, it says, "And when he had opened the 7th seal, there was silence in heaven about the space of half an hour." That's it. And so I was going to leave it at that, and woke up one morning, the Lord says, "No, you've got to do better than that." Got it. So back to the computer. Spent, quite a bit of time searching what does it mean by silence. What are we supposed to learn by the silence? So I'm sort of nitpicking. I will take every silence in the entire Bible and see if it tells me something, and then the Holy Spirit just writes the outline. The significance of silence, repentance, ruin, restoration, and renewal. And I think that has significance, this silence in heaven. So we'll be comparing those and do that next week. Anyway, that's it. That's all we'll do for tonight, and probably leave you in a state of confusion. It's nice having Charles back. And what's your name again? Yes. Velma, I hope you'll return. Thank. Yeah. Oh, let's welcome Pat back. So wonderful. Wonderful to have you back. Okay, let's just close in prayer.
I enjoyed it.
Thank you. Father, we just thank you for your word. We thank you for the Maskilim who lived in the past and the Maskilim who live in the future. We thank you for the instructors and teachers we have today. Help them to have the wisdom, God's understanding of the word, and help them to be clear in their teaching. And we thank you for the glory that lies ahead, that we can enjoy the blessed hope. And we know that while life is good, what lies ahead is very far better. And help us to be joyful in that. In the meantime, help us to be about our Father's business and redeem the time because the days are evil. We ask you to bless our country, too, and our leaders in Jesus' name.